Michael Donovan, a successful businessman and millionaire, sat behind the wheel of his luxurious black Bentley, absent-mindedly looking at the passing houses and trees. He was tired after a long day on the road, his eyes slightly reddened from hours of driving. The graying temples and wrinkles around his eyes gave away his age, but his posture remained straight and his gaze sharp and attentive. Michael had come to this town to spend the night and continue his journey in the morning. He had never imagined that fate had prepared him for an encounter that would turn his life upside down. As he drove past a small park, Michael caught sight of a woman's figure. Something in her movements seemed familiar to him, and he involuntarily turned his head to get a better look at the passerby. At that moment, time seemed to slow down and the world around him lost its clarity. She was walking down the sidewalk, holding the hand of a small boy. Her brown hair, gathered in a careless bun, was golden in the setting sun. She was wearing a simple summer dress with a floral print that fluttered slightly in the wind. The woman was smiling as she looked at the child, and that smile! Michael would recognize her out of 1,000. "Emily!" he whispered, unable to believe his eyes. Michael's heart skipped a beat, then hammered with redoubled force. He braked sharply, nearly causing an accident on the road. There were angry honks behind him, but Michael didn't hear them. All his attention was fixed on the woman and the child, who were walking slowly down the sidewalk. With trembling hands, he parked the car at the curb and turned off the engine. Michael sat motionless, trying to collect his thoughts and calm his racing heartbeat. Memories came over him like tidal waves, flooding his mind with images from the past. He remembered their first meeting in college, the shy smiles and awkward touches. He remembered their first kiss under the starry sky, when it felt like the whole world existed just for the two of them. He remembered long conversations about the future, dreams of a life and career together. And with pain in his heart, he remembered that fateful day when he had decided that ambition was more important than love. Michael looked at Emily's retreating figure, and he was overcome with a sharp sense of regret. He realized that he'd been chasing the specter of success all these years, while real happiness had been close at hand, but he'd let it go. But there was something else that kept Michael's mind on his own. The boy walking next to Emily looked about 9 or 10 years old. He had dark hair and a posture that was subtly reminiscent of Michael himself as a child. My heart clenched again as the impossible thought flashed through my mind. Is that really my son? Michael sat in the car, unable to take his eyes off Emily and the boy. They were almost around the corner, and he realized that if he didn't act now, he could lose them forever. Again. With difficulty overcoming his inner resistance and fear, Michael opened the car door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. His legs felt like absorbent cotton and his throat felt dry. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, and followed Emily and the baby at a brisk pace. As he approached them, Michael could feel himself struggling with each step. His thoughts were jumbled, and his heart felt like it was going to jump out of his chest. He didn't know what he would say, how he would explain his appearance after so many years of silence. But he knew one thing: this was his chance to make things right, and he couldn't miss it. "Emily," he said softly as the distance between them shrank to a few meters. The woman turned around and their gazes met. Her eyes flashed with surprise, followed by a range of emotions: disbelief, hurt, anger, and, somewhere deep, a barely perceptible spark of the love they'd once shared. "Michael!" Her voice trembled, and she gripped the boy's hand tighter. They stood across from each other, separated by years of silence and unspoken words. Michael could feel the child's curious gaze on him and couldn't help but note how much the boy resembled himself as a child. "Yeah. I didn't expect to meet you here," Michael began, feeling the words stick in his throat. "How are you?" Emily looked at him with a mixture of surprise and wariness. "I'm fine, Michael. What are you doing here?" Michael shifted his gaze to the boy, who was eyeing the stranger with interest. "Is that—" He couldn't finish the question, afraid to hear the answer. Emily realized the unspoken question and closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering herself. "It's Jason. My son," she paused, then added quietly but clearly, "our son Michael." Those words struck Michael like lightning. He felt the ground go from under his feet. All his ideas about life, all his plans and ambitions became meaningless in an instant in the face of this revelation. "Hey, Jason," Michael pronounced, trying to keep his voice calm. "Nice to meet you." The boy smiled back, and that smile was an exact replica of Michael's. "Hi," he replied a little shyly. Michael shifted his gaze back to Emily. He could read the challenge in her eyes, as if she was waiting for his reaction, ready to protect their son from any pain. "Emily, I need to talk to you," Michael said, feeling each word come out with difficulty. "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but maybe we could sit down somewhere and talk?" Emily hesitated, her gaze darting between Michael and Jason. Finally, she took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay. There's a cafe not too far away. We can talk there." They walked slowly down the street, Emily and Jason in front, Michael slightly behind. The air between them was filled with unspoken words and questions. Michael felt his life change irrevocably with each step. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was sure of one thing. He would never again miss the chance to be a part of Emily and Jason's lives. The sun had finally disappeared over the horizon, giving way to twilight. The lights of the small town came on one by one, illuminating the path of the three figures walking down the street. Michael Donovan was born in a small town on the outskirts of Boston to a middle-class family. His father worked as a manager at a local bank, and his mother was a schoolteacher. From early childhood, Michael showed remarkable abilities and determination. He was always the best student in the class, participated in all kinds of Olympiads and competitions, always winning prizes. Michael's parents, especially his father, encouraged his desire for success in every possible way. "Son, in this world you are either a winner or a loser. The choice is yours," his father often repeated. These words are deeply embedded in Michael's memory, shaping his worldview and ambitions. Michael's childhood was filled with books, studying, and dreams of a great future. He had few friends, as he spent most of his time studying or helping his father in the garden. Michael realized early on that success requires sacrifice and was willing to sacrifice a lot for his goals. Due to his outstanding success in school, Michael received a scholarship to a prestigious university. He chose the Faculty of Economics, dreaming of a career in the world of finance and business. The university opened up a new world of opportunities for him, and Michael plunged headlong into his studies. The first 2 years at university flew by like a day. Michael fully focused on his studies, attended additional courses and seminars, participated in scientific conferences. His teachers noted not only his intelligence, but also his incredible efficiency. It seemed that this young man had an inexhaustible supply of energy and enthusiasm. However, despite all his successes, Michael often felt lonely. He rarely participated in student parties or social events, preferring to spend his time in the library or working on his next project. His classmates respected him for his intelligence and determination, but few could call him a close friend. That all changed in his 3rd year when Michael met Emily. It happened in the university library, where Michael, as usual, stayed up late working on his research project. Emily, an art student, was looking for a book on the history of painting for her essay. Michael noticed her as she stood on a stepladder trying to get the book from the top shelf. The book slipped out of her hands and fell to the floor, opening on a page with a reproduction of Van Gogh's Starry Night. Michael picked up the book and held it out to Emily. Their gazes met, and they both felt something change in the world around them. "Thank you," Emily smiled. "I'm Emily." "Michael," he replied, feeling his heart begin to beat more frequently. They got to talking, and Michael was surprised to find that he found it easy and interesting to talk to Emily. She was the complete opposite of him, creative, spontaneous, full of life and enthusiasm. Emily saw beauty in the small things, could enjoy the moment, and was not afraid to dream of seemingly unfulfilled dreams. Since that evening in the library, Michael and Emily began to spend more and more time together. Emily seemed to open a new world for Michael, a world of art, emotions, and simple joys of life. She taught him to relax, to laugh at himself, and to appreciate not only the achievements, but also the process. Michael, in turn, delighted Emily with his intelligence, determination, and depth of thought. He helped her structure her creative ideas, supported her in difficult moments, and always found the right words to encourage her. Their relationship developed rapidly. In just a few months they were inseparable. Michael, for the first time in his life, felt what it means to be truly happy. With Emily, he could be himself without fear of appearing weak or imperfect. The summer after their 3rd year, they spent together traveling through Europe. They were the happiest days of Michael's life. They wandered the narrow streets of Paris, rode the gondola in Venice, admired the sunset on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea in Spain. Michael felt that, with Emily, he was ready to conquer the whole world. Returning to the university in his final year, Michael with renewed vigor took up his studies. His thesis attracted the attention of several large companies, and even before graduation he received several job offers. Michael was over the moon. He had dreamed of a brilliant career, and now this dream was becoming a reality. Emily shared his joy, but deep down she was beginning to worry. She saw how Michael's ambitions were beginning to consume all his time and energy again. After graduation, Michael accepted an offer from a prestigious consulting firm in New York. Emily decided to go with him, postponing her plans to pursue a master's degree in art history. She believed in Michael and was ready to support him as he began his career. The first year in New York was difficult for both of them. Michael was at work from early morning until late at night, including weekends. Emily got a job at a small gallery, but felt lonely in the big city. They spent less and less time together, and tension began to build in their relationship. Michael was quickly moving up the career ladder. His diligence and sharp mind did not go unnoticed by the management of the company. After 2 years, he became the youngest senior consultant in the history of the firm. However, success had its price. Michael was almost never at home, was constantly on business trips, and worked on complex projects. Emily tried to talk to Michael about their relationship, about the fact that they were drifting apart. But each time Michael found excuses for his busyness, promised that soon everything would change, that a little more, and they would be able to spend more time together. "Michael, we hardly see each other anymore. Do you remember the last time we had dinner together?" Emily asked one day. "Emily, understand, this is temporary. I need to establish myself to secure our future. Don't you want to live in a nice house, travel, and not think about money?" Michael replied, "But weren't we happy when we had almost nothing? Remember our trip to Europe? We lived in cheap hostels, ate street food, but we were so happy." Michael listened to Emily, but deep down he already knew he couldn't give up his ambitions. Career became an obsession for him. He could not imagine his life without this constant race for success. The turning point came when Michael was offered to lead a major project in London. It was the opportunity he had dreamed of, a chance to prove himself internationally, to take the next big step in his career. When Michael told Emily about it, she realized it was the end. She could no longer live in the shadow of his career, giving up her dreams and plans. "Michael, I can't go to London with you," Emily said quietly. "What? Why not?" "Emily, it's a great opportunity for both of us." Michael was genuinely surprised. "For you, Michael. It's a great opportunity for you. But what about me? My career? My plans?" "But you could get a job at a gallery in London. There are so many art opportunities there." Emily shook her head. "This isn't about the job, Michael. It's about us. We've lost ourselves in this race for success. You don't notice anything around you but the work. We haven't been a couple for a long time, just roommates." Michael felt the ground go from under his feet. He knew they were estranged, but he hadn't thought it was that serious. Deep down he knew Emily was right, but he couldn't bring himself to give up on his dream. "Emily, I love you. Let's try to make things right. I'll work less, I promise." He tried to salvage the situation. "Michael, we both know that's not true. Your job is a part of you, and I can't ask you to give it up. But I can't live like this anymore either. We need to break up." Those words sounded like a judgment. Michael looked at Emily, the woman he loved more than anything in the world, and realized that he was losing her forever. But even at that moment, a part of him was already thinking about the upcoming project in London, the new opportunities and challenges. A week later, Emily packed her bags and left. Michael walked her to the cab. They hugged one last time, and he watched as the car drove her away from his life. At that moment he felt an emptiness inside, but quickly drowned out the feeling with thoughts of his upcoming job. Michael arrived in London on a cold September morning. The gray sky and drizzling rain seemed to reflect his inner state after his breakup with Emily. But Michael quickly pushed those thoughts away. He had not come here to indulge in melancholy, but to conquer the financial capital of the world. The first months in London were stressful. Michael worked 16 to 18 hours a day, trying to prove his worth to new colleagues and clients. His apartment in the prestigious Mayfair neighborhood was often empty. Michael would only go there to sleep for a few hours before the next day's work. His efforts did not go unnoticed. Within 6 months, Michael had successfully completed his first major project, saving the client millions of pounds. This brought him not only a generous bonus, but also a reputation as a rising star in consulting. The next few years flew by like a day. Michael moved from project to project, each time raising the bar on his achievements. He consulted for major corporations, developed restructuring strategies for entire industries, and spoke at international conferences. At the age of 35, Michael became the youngest partner in the history of his firm. His annual income was in the millions of pounds, and his client list included Fortune 500 names. Michael bought a luxurious penthouse overlooking the Thames, collected expensive watches and works of art. His life seemed to be the epitome of success. Michael flew only first class or on private jets, stayed in the presidential suites of the best hotels in the world, dined at Michelin-starred restaurants. He became a regular at elite clubs in London, where he socialized with politicians, financiers, and celebrities. In his 7th year in London, Michael decided it was time to move on. He left the consulting firm and started his own investment fund. With his reputation and connections, he quickly raised billions of dollars under management. Michael's fund specialized in high-risk but potentially ultra-profitable investments. He had a nose for promising startups and a knack for finding undervalued assets. His investments in the technology sector yielded astronomical returns when several of the companies he backed became unicorns. Michael's fortune grew exponentially. He bought a villa on the Côte d'Azur, a chalet in the Swiss Alps, and a private island in the Caribbean. His name regularly appeared in the lists of the most influential people in the world according to Forbes and Time. But the more Michael's fortune grew, the more he felt an inner emptiness. He surrounded himself with luxury, but his homes remained cold and lifeless. He had hundreds of business contacts, but not a single true friend. The women in his life changed like a kaleidoscope, but no relationship lasted longer than a few months. Michael tried to fill the void by buying more and more expensive things. He ordered a yacht 85 meters long, bought several rare cars, began collecting rare wines. But nothing brought him real satisfaction. Sometimes, late at night, sitting in his penthouse with a glass of whiskey, Michael thought of Emily. He thought about how they dreamed of traveling together, discovering new places, just enjoying life. Now he had everything he needed to fulfill those dreams, but there was no one he wanted to share them with. In the 10th year of his London life, when Michael was 42 years old, a crisis caught up with him. It happened on an ordinary working day. Michael was sitting in his luxurious office on the top floor of a skyscraper in the city, reviewing reports on the returns of his fund. The numbers on the screen showed another successful quarter, but Michael suddenly realized that those numbers didn't mean anything to him anymore. He looked at his watch. It was well past midnight. Michael got up from his desk and walked to the panoramic window. London lay before him, twinkling with lights, alive and full of energy even at this late hour. Suddenly, Michael felt incredibly lonely. He realized that he had achieved everything he had dreamed of, but had lost himself in the process. That night, for the first time in years, Michael truly reflected on his life. He remembered his youthful dreams, his love for Emily, the enthusiasm with which he had once started his career. Where had it all gone? When had success and money become the only meaning of his existence? This realization hit Michael like a bolt of lightning. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, difficulty breathing. Michael tried to go to his desk to call for help, but lost consciousness right in the middle of the office. He woke up in the hospital. The doctor's diagnosis was disappointing: a heart attack caused by years of stress, poor diet, and lack of exercise. It was the first time Michael had faced his own mortality, and it scared him more than anything in his life. Recovery from the disease was long and difficult. Michael spent weeks in the hospital and then months in a rehabilitation center. For the first time in many years, he was forced to stop and really listen to his body and his thoughts. During rehab, Michael did a lot of reflecting on his life. He realized that his obsession with work and success was an attempt to dull the pain of breaking up with Emily and his fear of real intimacy. He had built an empire, but was left completely alone at the top of it. Michael began working with a therapist, trying to make sense of his feelings and motivations. He rediscovered the simple joys of life, the taste of fresh fruit, the beauty of a sunrise, the pleasure of a good book. Gradually, he began to feel more whole, more alive. Recovery took almost a year. During this time, Michael learned to meditate, began practicing yoga, switched to a healthy diet. He lost the excess weight he had gained from years of stressful work, and for the first time in a long time felt truly healthy. Upon returning to work, Michael realized that he could no longer live his life the way he used to. He began to gradually reduce his involvement in the day-to-day management of the fund, handing over more responsibility to his team. This gave him time to think about the future. Michael realized that his biggest regret was not having a family and children. He was already in his 40s, and the thought that he might not have time to be a father terrified him. But how do you find true love and build a family when you're a famous millionaire? How do you know who really needs you and who is only interested in your money? And then Michael came up with an idea. He decided to travel across the country to find a worthy heir to his fortune. This journey was to be not only a search for a successor, but also an opportunity for Michael to rediscover the world, to get acquainted with ordinary people, perhaps to find a new meaning of life. Michael carefully prepared for his journey. He bought an inconspicuous car, put together a simple closet that would not give him away as a millionaire. He decided to travel incognito, posing as just a middle-class businessman. The plan was simple: to visit small towns and universities, to communicate with young entrepreneurs and students, to look for someone who would impress him with his intelligence, determination, and, most importantly, humanity. Michael wanted to find not just a capable manager for his fortune, but a man with a heart who could utilize those resources for the good of society. Before leaving, Michael had one last meeting with his team, handing them instructions on how to manage the fund in his absence. He said he was going on an extended trip to regain his health and pursue new investment opportunities. No one but his personal assistant knew the true purpose of this trip. On a clear spring morning, Michael got into his new, unremarkable car and drove out of London. The unknown was ahead of him, but for the first time in years he felt truly alive and full of hope. Michael did not know what awaited him on this journey. Would he find a worthy heir? Would he meet a new love? Would he be able to right the wrongs of the past? But he was ready for this adventure, ready to open a new chapter of his life. Leaving the bustling metropolis, Michael felt the weight of the past years falling off his shoulders. Ahead was a road full of opportunities and new discoveries. And somewhere out there, in the unknown, perhaps his true destiny was waiting for him. Michael began his journey with small towns in the south of England. He stayed in modest hotels, ate lunch in local cafes, and spent hours observing people in parks and on the streets. It was a completely new experience for him to be part of ordinary life, rather than looking at the world through the tinted windows of a limousine. In Brighton, he met a young entrepreneur, Jack, who had opened an eco-friendly cafe. Michael was impressed by Jack's enthusiasm and his concern for the environment. They spent the evening discussing the future of the planet and the role of business in solving environmental problems. Jack, imagine you have unlimited resources. How would you use them to improve the world? Michael asked. Jack thought for a moment. I would invest in education and technology that would help people live more sustainably. But I don't think money is the most important thing. It's more important to change the way people think. Michael was impressed with the answer, but felt something was missing. Jack was an idealist, but he lacked a practical understanding of how to put his ideas into action. In a small village in Cornwall, Michael stayed on a farm where he met the Thompson family. They lived a simple life, growing organic fruit and vegetables. Michael spent a few days helping them on the farm and was amazed at how happy they seemed despite their lack of luxury. In the evening, sitting by the fireplace, Michael asked the head of the household, George, what is the most important thing in life to you? George smiled. Family, health, and a clear conscience. Mr. Michael, wealth isn't just about money. Wealth is the ability to enjoy simple things, a sunset, the laughter of your children, the taste of an apple you grew with your own hands. These words touched Michael deeply. He realized that all his life he had been chasing false values, missing the most important things. Traveling through Wales, Michael visited several universities where he interacted with students and young scientists. He was impressed by their energy and ambition, but also noticed how many of them were obsessed with the idea of quick success and wealth. In one of his meetings with business school students, Michael asked the question, how do you define success? Most answers were predictable: a high position, a big paycheck, recognition. But one student, a quiet guy named Alex, said, for me, success is being able to do what you love while helping others. Michael asked Alex to expand on his thought, and the young man talked about his dream of creating a social enterprise to help homeless people find jobs and housing. "What if your enterprise doesn't turn a profit?" Michael asked. "Profit is not the main goal. The main thing is to help people get back on their feet. If we can change even a few lives for the better, it will already be a success," replied Alex. Michael was impressed by Alex's sincerity and depth of thought. He even thought he might have found a potential heir. But when he offered Alex financial support for his project, the young man politely declined. "Thank you, but I want to achieve everything on my own. I believe that difficulties make us stronger and help us better understand the problems of those we want to help," Alex said. Michael was both disappointed and delighted. Alex had many of the qualities he was looking for in an heir, but his reluctance to accept help meant that he was not suitable for the role of successor to a vast fortune. In Scotland, Michael spent several weeks volunteering at a hospice. It was perhaps the most difficult yet most important experience of his journey. He cared for seriously ill people, listened to their stories, and held their hand in their last moments of life. Here Michael met a nurse, Sarah, who had worked at the hospice for over 20 years. Her kindness and patience amazed Michael. "How do you cope every day?" he asked her one day. Sarah smiled. "You know, a lot of people think that hospice work is a constant sadness. But actually, it's a place where you really learn to appreciate life. It's where you realize what's really important." "And what is important?" Michael asked. "Love, forgiveness, gratitude. Being able to say, 'I love you,' to those you care about. The opportunity to make up with those you're in a fight with. An opportunity to just enjoy every day you're given," Sarah replied. These words touched Michael deeply. He realized that he had spent his life chasing things that ultimately didn't matter. While traveling in the north of England, Michael unexpectedly met his former colleague, Tom, with whom they had started their careers together at a consulting firm. Unlike Michael, Tom didn't become a millionaire. He had left the corporate world years ago and now taught at a local school. They spent the evening reminiscing about old times and discussing their life paths. Michael was surprised at how happy and content Tom looked. "You don't regret leaving the business?" Michael asked. Tom shook his head. "Not for a second. You know, Michael, money is nice, but it can't buy the satisfaction of actually making a difference in the world. When I see my students grow and develop, when their eyes light up, when they realize something new, that feeling can't be compared to any millions." Michael reflected. He remembered how he had once long ago dreamed of becoming a teacher, but had given up the idea for a more lucrative career. "What do you think makes a person truly successful?" Michael asked. Tom smiled. "I think success is when you can look back and see that the world is a little better because of you. It doesn't matter if the change is big or small. What matters is that you left something good behind." As Michael's journey continued, he realized more and more that his ideas about life, success, and happiness were limited and largely wrong. He met people who were doing amazing things with far fewer resources, making a difference in the lives of others. Michael began to ask himself deep questions. What really matters in life? How do you use your resources and influence to make the world a better place? How do you find a balance between personal success and the public good? He realized he wasn't just looking for an heir to his fortune, but for someone who could use those resources wisely and responsibly. But the more he interacted with people, the more he realized how difficult this task was. After a few months of traveling, Michael began to feel frustrated. He had met many wonderful people, but none completely matched his vision of the perfect heir. Some lacked ambition, some lacked compassion, others lacked practicality. One day, sitting on the shore of a lake in the Lake District, Michael reflected on his journey. He was remembering all the people he had met, all the stories he had heard. And suddenly it hit him. Maybe the problem wasn't that he couldn't find the perfect heir, but that he was trying to find someone who would fulfill his own unfulfilled dreams and right his wrongs. Michael realized that he wasn't looking for an heir, he was looking for redemption. He wanted to find someone to live the life he himself had failed to live, a life full of meaning, love, and true success. This epiphany changed Michael's perspective on the purpose of his journey. He decided that instead of looking for one perfect heir, he could use his resources to support the many people and projects that make the world a better place. Michael began thinking about creating a foundation that would invest in social enterprises, support educational initiatives, and help develop environmental projects. He realized that his legacy may not be in one person, but in hundreds or thousands of lives that he could make a difference. With these thoughts in mind, Michael decided to end his journey and return to London to begin work on a new project. But fate had another surprise in store for him. On his way back to London, Michael decided to make one last stop in a small town in Vermont. He planned to spend only one night there before returning to the big city. And it was there, walking through the quiet streets, that Michael saw her, Emily, his former lover, whom he had left years ago for a career. She was walking, holding the hand of a little boy who looked strikingly like Michael himself as a child. Michael's heart sank. In that moment, all of his journey, all of the lessons he had learned, all of his plans for the future, all of it receded into the background. He realized that fate had given him a chance to right the biggest mistake of his life. Michael took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready for an encounter that could change his entire life. Michael stood frozen in place, unable to take his eyes off Emily and the boy. His heart was beating so hard that it felt like it was about to jump out of his chest. Gathering his wits, he took a few steps forward. "Emily," he said quietly, almost in a whisper. Emily turned around at the familiar voice. Her eyes widened in surprise, and then a whole gamut of emotions flashed through them. Shock, disbelief, and something else Michael couldn't quite figure out. "Michael, what are you doing here?" she asked, instinctively pulling the boy closer to her. Michael took a deep breath. "Yeah, I'm traveling. Trying to find myself, I guess." He grinned nervously, realizing how corny that sounded. "And that's—" He shifted his gaze to the boy. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering herself. "This is Jason. My son," she paused. "Our son, Michael." Those words struck Michael like a bolt of lightning. He felt the ground go from under his feet. All his ideas about life, all his plans and ambitions lost meaning in an instant in the face of this revelation. "Why don't we sit down?" Michael suggested, pointing to a bench nearby. Emily hesitated, but then nodded. They sat down, Jason nestled between them, peering curiously at the strange man. "How old is he?" Michael asked, unable to take his eyes off the boy. 10, replied Emily. "He was born 7 months after you left." Michael felt a lump come up to his throat. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily sighed. "What would it have changed, Michael? You were so obsessed with your career. I didn't want to be a burden." A heavy silence hung. Jason, sensing the tension, began to nervously dangle his feet. "Mom, are we going to the park?" he asked, breaking the silence. That gave Michael an idea. "You know, I heard there's a great amusement park not far from here. Maybe we could go there together? If you don't mind, of course." He looked at Emily, a pleading look in his eyes. Emily hesitated. She looked at Jason, who visibly perked up at the mention of the amusement park. "Please, Mom, can we go?" the boy pleaded. Emily took a deep breath. "Okay," she said finally. "We can go. But I need to talk to Michael alone first." While Jason played on the playground nearby, Michael and Emily found a place where they could talk without prying ears. "Michael, I don't know what you expect from this meeting," Emily began, "but I don't want Jason to get hurt. He doesn't know who his father is, and I'm not sure this is the right time to tell him." Michael nodded. "I understand. And I'm not asking for anything you're not ready for. I want to get to know him. And, if you'll let me, to try to build a relationship with both of you." Emily stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to unravel his true intentions. "Why now, Michael? After all these years?" Michael told her about his journey, about reassessing his values, about how he realized that the pursuit of success had left him with an emptiness in his soul. "I know I don't deserve a second chance," he said. "But I've changed, Emily, and I want to try to make things right." Emily was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "I can't promise anything, Michael, but we can start with this trip to the park. We'll see how it goes." The next day they went to the amusement park. Jason was excited. His energy was contagious. Michael watched him with a mixture of pride and sadness, realizing how much he was missing out. They rode merry-go-rounds, roller coasters, ate cotton candy and hot dogs. Michael tried to pay attention to Jason, but not overdo it so as not to arouse suspicion. At one point, when Emily stepped away to buy water, Jason asked Michael, "Are you a friend of Mom's?" Michael felt his heart squeeze. "Yeah," he answered after a pause. We're old friends." Jason nodded. "I like you. You're not as boring as your mom's other friends." Michael couldn't hold back a smile. "Thanks, buddy. I like you too." After the trip to the amusement park, Michael asked Emily for permission to stay in town for a while. She reluctantly agreed, but set clear boundaries. The following weeks were filled with careful bonding. Michael tried to spend time with Jason without being intrusive or revealing the truth about his paternity. They went fishing, played soccer in the park, and visited the local science museum. Emily watched their interactions with a mixture of anxiety and hope. She could see Jason reaching out to Michael, his eyes lighting up when Michael told stories about his travels or explained complex scientific concepts. Gradually, Emily began to thaw as well. She saw how Michael had changed, how he became more attentive, patient, how sincerely trying to mend the relationship. A month after their first meeting, Emily invited Michael to have a serious conversation. "I see how you've changed," she said. "And I see how Jason has grown attached to you. I think it's time to tell him the truth." Michael felt his heart beat faster. "Are you sure?" Emily nodded. "It won't be easy, but he deserves to know the truth. And you deserve a chance to be his father." The next day, they sat down with Jason together and told him the whole story. The boy listened wide-eyed, shifting his gaze from Michael to Emily and back again. "So, you're my daddy?" he asked finally, looking at Michael. Michael nodded, feeling tears coming up to his throat. "Yes, Jason. I'm your dad. And I'm very sorry I haven't been around for all these years. But if you'll let me, I'd really like to be a part of your life." Jason was silent for a long moment, mulling over what he had heard. Then he stood up and, to everyone's surprise, hugged Michael tightly. That moment was a turning point in the lives of all three of them. Michael decided to stay in the city for good. He bought a small house near Emily and Jason and began to take an active part in his son's life. The relationship with Emily developed slowly and cautiously. They started with friendly conversations, taking walks together, and discussing Jason's upbringing. Gradually, the bond that once connected them began to re-emerge between them. Michael used his financial resources to help the local community. He started a foundation to support education, invested in environmental projects, and helped small businesses. But most importantly, he finally found true meaning in life through his relationship with his son and Emily. It's been 2 years since Michael reunited with Emily and Jason. During this time, their lives have undergone significant changes. Michael has fully integrated into small-town life, becoming an integral part of the local community. The relationship with Emily developed slowly. They began as friends, gradually rebuilding trust and understanding. Michael tried to be attentive and supportive without rushing things. Emily, in turn, was learning to open her heart again, overcoming fears and doubts. A year after the reunion, Michael proposed to Emily. It was not a lavish event at an expensive restaurant, but a quiet, intimate moment during their lakeside walk. Emily accepted the proposal, and they decided to have a modest wedding with only their closest friends and family in attendance. Jason, now 12 years old, was thrilled at the idea of his parents finally being together. He was actively involved in the wedding preparations, offering his ideas and helping with the arrangements. After the wedding, Michael moved into Emily and Jason's home. A new phase of their life, as a real family, began. Michael enthusiastically immersed himself in the daily chores that were previously foreign to him. Mornings began with preparing breakfast for the family. Michael learned how to make pancakes, Jason's favorite dish, and every Sunday, he experimented with cooking for the family. Emily joked that she never thought she would ever see a famous millionaire in an apron kneading pizza dough. Michael was actively involved in Jason's school life. He helped his son with his homework, especially in math and science. Together they created elaborate projects for school science fairs, and Jason was always proud to tell his classmates how they worked on a project with his father. On weekends, the family made sure to spend time together. They had picnics, went camping, and explored the neighborhood. Michael taught Jason how to play chess, and it became their special ritual. Every Saturday afternoon they sat down at the chessboard and spent hours discussing strategies and life in general. Michael hasn't forgotten his decision to use his resources to benefit the community. He started a local charitable foundation that supported educational initiatives, helped underprivileged families, and funded environmental projects. Emily actively participated in the work of the foundation, contributing her ideas and helping to organize events. Together they created a program to support young artists, which gave talented teenagers the opportunity to develop their skills. Jason did not stay away from his parents' charitable work either. He proposed the idea of creating a club of young volunteers at the school, and Michael helped to make the idea a reality. The club cleaned parks, helped at the animal shelter, and organized charity fairs. As Jason grew older, he became increasingly interested in different areas of knowledge. He inherited a love of science and technology from his father and creative thinking and empathy from his mother. This unique combination made him a special child, able to see the world from different perspectives. Michael noticed that his son often asked deep questions about life, society, and the world at large. He encouraged this curiosity by always finding time to have long conversations with Jason about various topics. When Jason turned 13, Michael gave him a subscription to the local library. This gift opened up a whole new world for the boy. Jason spent hours wandering between the shelves, selecting books on topics ranging from science fiction to the history of ancient civilizations. One evening, when Michael came into Jason's room to say goodnight, he noticed a thick book on his son's desk. It was Plato's The Republic, a complex philosophical work that Michael himself had only read at university. "Jason, you're reading Plato?" Michael asked in surprise. Jason looked up from the book. "Yes, Dad. I found it in the library. It's very interesting, though sometimes hard to understand." Michael sat down on the edge of his son's bed. "And what did you think of what you read?" Jason thought for a moment. "You know, Dad, Plato talks about justice and how an ideal society should be organized. But I'm not sure I agree with everything he writes." Michael was flabbergasted. His 13-year-old son was not just reading a complex philosophical text, but forming his own opinion about what he was reading. At that moment, Michael remembered his journey and his search for the perfect heir. He decided to ask his son some of the same questions he asked potential candidates, but in a more accessible way. "Jason, what do you think about justice? What do you think makes a society fair?" Michael asked. Jason thought for a moment. "I think a just society is where everyone has equal opportunities, where it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, what color your skin is, or where you come from. Everyone should have a chance to succeed if they're willing to work hard." Michael nodded, impressed with his son's answer. "And what do you think is more important, personal success or the common good?" "That's a tough question, Dad," Jason replied. "I don't think you can forget about yourself, but I don't think it's right to live only for yourself either. Maybe we need to find a balance. Strive for personal success, but use it to help others." Michael felt his heart fill with pride. "And if you had the opportunity to make a difference in the world, what would you do?" Jason smiled. "I would want all the children in the world to have the opportunity to learn. You know how we have kids from poor families in our school who have a hard time even buying textbooks? I'd like education to be available to everyone. And I'd also like to find a way to clean the oceans of plastic. You know, there are huge islands of garbage in the ocean. It's horrible." Michael was amazed at his son's depth of thinking and his concern for the world around him. He continued to ask questions, and with each answer Jason became more and more convinced that his son possessed exactly the qualities he was looking for in a potential heir: compassion, intelligence, and a desire to make the world a better place. "Jason, what does success mean to you?" Michael asked. "Success. I think it's when you can look back and see that you did something good. Not just made a lot of money or became famous, but actually helped someone or made a difference. Like you did, Dad, when you helped open a new library in our town. Did you see how excited people were? Now that, to me, is real success." Michael felt a lump come up to his throat. He realized that his son, without knowing it, had articulated exactly the understanding of success that Michael had come to after years of chasing money and status. "Do you know what the most important thing in life is, Jason?" Michael asked. Jason thought for a moment. "I think it's love, Dad. Love for family, for friends, for the world around us. And it's also important to be honest, with others and with yourself. Because if you're not honest, you might accomplish something, but you'll feel inside that it's not real." Michael was deeply moved by his son's wisdom. He realized that Jason, without realizing it, embodied all the qualities Michael had been looking for in a potential heir to his fortune and business. After that conversation, Michael couldn't sleep for a long time. He reflected on his journey, his search for the perfect heir, and how fate had brought him back to Emily and given him a son. He realized that all this time he hadn't just been looking for someone to whom he could pass on his fortune. He was looking for an extension of himself, someone who could fulfill all those dreams and ideals that Michael himself had once abandoned for the sake of career and money. And now he had found that person in his own son. Jason possessed not only intelligence and curiosity, but also a deep understanding of ethical issues, compassion for others, and a sincere desire to make the world a better place. Michael realized that his main task now was not just to pass on his fortune to his son, but to help him develop his unique qualities and support him in his pursuit of knowledge and goodness. The next morning, Michael shared his thoughts with Emily. She listened to him with understanding and agreed that Jason was indeed a special child. Together, they decided to create every opportunity for their son to develop his potential, but not by imposing on him the role of heir, but by allowing him to choose his own path. Michael began to involve Jason more in the work of his charitable foundation, allowing him to participate in decisions about new projects. He also organized meetings for his son with interesting people, scientists, philosophers, public figures, to broaden his horizons. Emily suggested creating a children's philosophy club in their town where Jason and other children could discuss deep questions and learn to think critically. The idea quickly found favor with local teachers and parents. Another 5 years passed. Jason had grown into an intelligent and compassionate young man. He was preparing for university, dreaming of studying environmental science and social entrepreneurship. Michael looked at his son with pride and love. He realized that he had found much more than an heir. He had found his true legacy, a son who embodied the best of himself and more. On quiet evenings, sitting in the backyard of their home, Michael often reflected on his life's journey. He remembered his former obsession with success, the long years spent in pursuit of wealth and status. It all seemed so distant and insignificant now compared to what he had now. Emily sat beside him, their hands intertwined. The years had only strengthened their bond, turning it into a deep, mature feeling based on mutual respect and understanding. They had been through a lot together, and each trial had only brought them closer together. Jason, now a young man of 18, was preparing for a new phase of his life. He had been accepted to a prestigious university where he planned to study environmental science and social entrepreneurship. But before beginning his studies, he decided to take a year off to travel the world and volunteer in various environmental and social projects. Michael supported his son's decision. He saw it as a reflection of his own journey that had once changed his life. But unlike Michael, who had set out on his journey to find an heir, Jason wanted to get to know the world better and see how he could contribute to making it a better place. "You know, Dad," Jason said on the eve of his departure, "I've always admired what you've done for our town and for a lot of people. But now I realize that real wealth isn't in the money, it's in the opportunity to make a difference in someone's life." Michael felt his eyes fill with tears of pride and love. "You're right, son. And I'm sure you'll do a lot of good in this world." On the day of Jason's departure, the whole family gathered at the airport. Emily hugged her son tightly, whispering words of love and farewell. Michael put his hand on Jason's shoulder. "Remember, son, no matter what happens, we'll always be here for you. And don't forget that true success isn't measured by what you get, but by what you give." Jason nodded, his eyes glowing with determination and anticipation of adventure. "I know, Dad. I'll try to make you proud." "We're already proud of you, sweetie," Emily said, wiping away tears. As Jason disappeared behind the front desk, Michael put his arm around Emily. They stood like that for a while, watching their son begin his own journey. On the way home, Michael reflected on how his life had changed. He remembered the young, ambitious businessman he had once been, a man who thought happiness could be measured by the numbers in a bank account. Now he knew that real wealth was the love of loved ones, the opportunity to help others and to leave behind a world a little better than it was. That evening, Michael sat in his office looking through old photographs. He came across a picture taken the day he had arrived in this small town, where he had met Emily and Jason by chance. He remembered how lost he had felt then, searching for the meaning of life and a worthy heir. Michael smiled, realizing the irony of fate. He'd gone on a journey in search of an heir and ended up finding family, love, and true purpose. His heir turned out to be not some stranger, but his own son, who embodied all the qualities Michael had sought in others for so long. Emily entered the study and hugged Michael from behind. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Michael turned to her, his eyes glowing with love and gratitude. "About how happy I am, and about how amazing life is turning out. You know, I've found so much more than I was looking for, haven't I?" Emily smiled and kissed him. "We've all found what we were looking for without even realizing it." They walked out into the backyard, holding hands. The sun was setting, coloring the sky with golden and pink hues. Michael took a deep breath of the evening air, feeling a deep peace. He realized that his journey was not over. It had simply taken on a new form. His journey was now about getting better every day, helping others and supporting Jason on his own journey. Michael knew there were many more challenges and adventures ahead of them. Jason had to find his way in life, and there would undoubtedly be moments of doubt and hardship. But Michael was confident that together they would get through it all. Standing there in the setting sun, next to the woman he loved, Michael felt a deep gratitude for everything he had. He had found his true wealth, and it was priceless. Thus ended one journey and began another. The journey of a family united by love, shared values, and a desire to make the world a better place. And Michael knew that this was only the beginning of their story.